Welcome to On Our Watch, a podcast about coastal erosion and sustainability in Louisiana. My name is Marian Evans. I'm a filmmaker and a producer of the documentary On Our Watch, a feature-length film that examines Louisiana's coastal land loss crisis and the ways in which it impacts our communities, industries, and culture. The film's director, Jonathan Evans, and I are proud to produce this podcast series that will continue to explore issues facing the Louisiana coast through conversations with local residents, community leaders, and experts. In this episode, we're speaking with Dean Wilson. Dean is the Executive Director for Atchafalaya Basinkeeper, a member organization of Waterkeeper Alliance that was founded with a mission to protect and restore the Atchafalaya Basin for future generations. And now, our interview with Dean Wilson. Well, thank you so much, Dean, for joining us today.
You,
I wanted to ask you about how you originally came to the Atchafalaya Basin and what was it that made you want to start the Atchafalaya Basinkeeper organization?
all the questions have long answers.
That's fine. Yeah.
I grew up in Spain. You can see I have an accent.
Mm-hmm.
I was born American. My father was in the Air Force. He's from Ohio. My mother's from Spain. So they divorced when I was a baby and I grew up in Spain. So when I came to the States, I decided to go to the Amazon. And I wanted to get used to the heat and the mosquitoes and all that good stuff, to live with a tribe in the Amazon. So I decided to come to Louisiana because I saw the Delta and I figured it would be hot, it would be humid, and it would be lots of mosquitoes. So that's how I came to the Atchafalaya Basin. In 1984, I stayed in the swamp for 4 months with only my bow, arrows, spears, and a few hooks. And fell in love with the Atchafalaya Basin. Mm-hmm. And instead of going to the Amazon, I decided to stay here. So in 1987, I officially become a full-time commercial fisherman. Mm-hmm. Made my living hunting and fishing. I got 4 kids. 3 of them grew up like that. You know, we eat from the basin. We have a big garden. We have chickens, eggs, you know. And the reason I decided to stay here is because if you look in paper, they have all kind of, protections for the Atchafalaya Basin. Mm-hmm. So you look in papers and you think it's a stable place that is completely protected, one way or the other. And when I learned as a commercial fisherman, that's not true. What's on paper is very different than reality. Mm-hmm. So I started learning things as a commercial fisherman. Did a project, they fill up with sand my fishing grounds. The project is supposed to be to minimize the amount of sand going into the wetlands. They did completely the opposite. So I started realizing that, learning about, how the agencies are being controlled by big corporations, oil companies, pipeline companies, and big land, corporations. And what did it for me was in the year 2000, they started cutting down the cypress trees for mulch. So I think it was 1987, it was a series of environmental easements that came out. Mm-hmm. And they're supposed to protect the trees in perpetuity. And then somewhere around 1989 and 1990, the mulch industry contacted these big corporations that own land in the Atchafalaya Basin and told them they could make a lot of money with cypress mulch. Mm-hmm. So I knew that as a commercial fisherman, I knew that nobody was doing anything to stop what was coming. They didn't want to believe it or didn't have the capacity, whatever reasons. So in the year 2000, they started cutting down all the cypress trees to make cypress mulch. And at that point, I could not see myself living in the time of history where we lose all the cypress forest forever. Mm-hmm. And I live with my conscience. I needed to do something about it. So that's when I got involved. First with Sierra Club Delta chapter in trying to stop the logging. And then in 2004, I founded Atchafalaya Basinkeeper.
Wow.
And that's where we are today. So this year is going to be the 20th anniversary of Atchafalaya Basinkeeper.
Wow, that's very impressive. And so for people who may not know, what exactly is the Atchafalaya Basin? Where is it located and why is it so important?
Okay, it's located in south central Louisiana. So you got the Mississippi River go through Louisiana. And then the Mississippi River used to fork in many different rivers. They cut down every single one of them. Those are called distributaries. So Atchafalaya Basin was the first distributary of the Mississippi River. So it's like an arm of the Mississippi River. Mm-hmm. It goes to the Gulf of Mexico. Also, the Atchafalaya Basin is being used as a spillway. So It used to be a time you could have gone by boat from Louisiana through the forest all the way to Missouri, southeastern Missouri. It was called North American Amazon. The Mississippi used to flood 24 million acres of forest. So imagine the flood capacity that the Mississippi used to have. You take a lot of water to fill that much territory. You don't have that any longer. So the Mississippi come higher than ever in the history of the river. So the problem for Louisiana is the Corps of Engineers cannot build the levees high enough to protect us from flooding all the time. So you have a major flood, those levees won't protect us. To solve that problem, the Corps built spillways. So they built two spillways. One of them is called the Waterkeeper Spillway, protect the city of New Orleans and everything below it. The water goes from Mississippi underneath I-10 into Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Borgne, Gulf of Mexico. Then above that, we have over 150 industrial plants, chemical plants, refineries, aluminum plants. The whole river is a long port, the Port of South Louisiana, which is one of the largest in the world, the largest in the Western Hemisphere. That needs to be protected. You have Baton Rouge all the way to New Orleans. So to protect that section of the river, they built a second spillway. And what they did is they used the Atchafalaya Basin as a spillway to divert that water back into the Gulf of Mexico. So this is the way they did it. They put 3 dams to control how much water goes from the Mississippi into the Atchafalaya. By law, they had to divert 1/3 of the combined flows, Mississippi, or 30% of the combined flows, Mississippi River, go into the Atchafalaya River. So most of the water from the Atchafalaya comes from the Mississippi River. Now, you cannot pass that kind of flood through those dams. It will destroy the dams. So they built a spillway below it, which is 125 iron gates on an armored section of the levee to move that water through the Atchafalaya Basin. Now, so you had to move that flood, the huge flood, bypassing all the industry, all the people, all the way to 140 miles or so. So if you put levees along the Atchafalaya River, those levees will be over the top. Again, you need flood capacity. You need the capacity, the bathtub, to hold the water as it moves, bypassing all people and industry. So they put the levees like on average like 18 miles apart, and that creates the bathtub. So that's what we have today. When they put the levee systems, they cut the surface of the Atchafalaya Basin by less than half of where it used to be. And on top of that, they have no considerations for the hydrology of the ecology of the basin. They start building levees, whatever was on the way, they cut it into rivers, bayous, lakes, all cut into huge impacts to the Atchafalaya Basin. And on top of that, most of the Atchafalaya Basin, it is privately claimed. In other places, like in Texas, it will be public, but it's not here. Meaning that these corporations do know, they want to make a profit, make it harder to protect the Atchafalaya Basin. So we deal with a lot of issues with in the Atchafalaya Basin. The lack of enforcement of the environmental laws is the main problem for the Atchafalaya Basin. And they're very important for many things. The environmental laws are there for a reason. And if you don't enforce them, I think the worst part of all that is that it's easier and cheaper to do it wrong.
Right. So I was wondering if you could talk to us about how sediment diversions are affecting the health of the basin and how they might affect the future of the communities that live here.
That's the main message I would like to share in this podcast. Is something that most people don't know because our media don't cover it. Okay, so we talk about the importance of the Atchafalaya Basin to protect from New Orleans all the way down. Right now, we have the state of Mississippi suing the Corps of Engineers to stop using the Morganza Spillway because the environmental impacts that they have into the coast of Mississippi, and use the Morganza Spillway in the Atchafalaya instead. So we talk about how you have levees 80 miles apart for a reason. You need the flood capacity, and that word is very important, flood capacity to hold floods. You need the bathtub. Now, what happened, you have a bathtub in your house, and you can put, say, 500 gallons. And I go there overnight, and I fill it up with sand, and you open the faucet, and you try to put 500 gallons on a bathtub that is half full of sand. You're going to flood your house. It's the same thing. As you fill those wetlands with sand and silt, you are losing flood capacity. And as you lose flood capacity, we can never get it back again. When those forests, the trees everywhere is full of sand, and we're talking about, tens of thousands of acres of You cannot go there and take the sand out.
Yeah.
You know,
Can't be
it's
undone.
gone forever. So you have a situation where we have subsidence, the whole coastal Louisiana is subsident, including on this side of the levee, and then you filling up the wetlands they're supposed to protect from floods. So now we have areas in the basin that are higher in elevation than the areas they're supposed to be protecting from flooding. And we are already paying the consequences. We have a major flood. My house here, it flooded in 2021. Then it never flooded before. The floods are getting worse because everything drains back into the Atchafalaya Basin below Morgan City, and you filling up the bathtub. You increase the floods on the area side the levee systems, because eventually they had to drain in the other side. So we already see the catastrophe that is causing to fill up these wetlands. And why they want to fill those wetlands is mainly oil companies, pipeline companies, and big, land corporations that wants to fill the wetlands. So they put in the future of New Orleans, the future of Baton Rouge, the industry, the whole future of the state, and pretty much the nation. Because imagine if we have a major flood that all those plants go underwater.
Yeah.
What it will do to our nation?
Right.
If a terrorist group will come here and do that, it will be the biggest terrorist attack in the history of the United States. And we do it ourselves.
Yeah, it's not just affecting the communities here. There's a lot of other repercussions.
Affected the whole country.
Right.
And not only that, now we're talking about, human needs. Now we talk about wildlife, okay? So the planet is warming up. Sea levels are rising, it's a fact, So you have all bunch of birds. All the birds you don't see in the winter, but you see in the spring and summer. Where they come from? They come from the tropics. All the little songbirds, beautiful, the yellow ones, and the ones with colors and all that, they sing in your backyard. They come from the tropics, okay? Peregrine falcons, the herons that you see around, little blue heron, yellow crowned heron, black crowned heron. All these birds come from there, So how they come here? Okay, the Mississippi Delta is one of the largest in the world. Some of the most productive wetlands in the entire planet. And it's a straight route from Yucatan through the delta of the Mississippi River. Birds don't like to fly over hills, and they like to go fly straight line. You put a straight line through the Gulf of Mexico, you get the coast of Louisiana. So nearly the entire eastern population of those birds, or North American population, and many of the western species of the western population come through our wetlands in the delta. Many of these wetlands are one of the main habitats left for them. That's the destination, Many of the herons, that's the main stronghold for them. Many of the warbler species, like prothonothalid warblers, that's the main. So you have that. And so what it means for the planet is the delta of the Mississippi is the most important ecosystem for migratory birds in the whole hemisphere. Because that's where they go. You're gonna protect migration in the Western Hemisphere. You're gonna protect wetlands and forests in Yucatan and the delta. Now we're gonna project ourselves 50 years from now. So you try to picture yourself how Louisiana will look like, say 50 to 100 years from now. The last ecosystem that you got left for these birds is gonna be the Atchafalaya Basin, being the largest wetland in North America, forested wetland in North America. The Pearl River Basin. You have the Sabine River wetlands, they go north to south. But the main one that contains everything from Mars, and you can sustain for a long, long time. Because the delta of the Atchafalaya is still growing, even with sea level rising, it's still growing. You can sustain that for I don't know how long, but maybe indefinitely. You know, and then we're destroying that. On top of that, Atchafalaya Basin contains the most productive wetlands in the entire planet. It feeds more birds per acre. Then, because we have the largest production of wild crawfish in the world, it feeds more birds per acre than any other wetland. So we with the stewards of an ecosystem, they have, it's a super ecosystem. They can sustain huge amounts of birds, more than any other wetland in the planet. And that will be the last place for the birds to go. And what we're doing, we're destroying it.
What have been some of your successes as an organization in terms of preventing illegal activity and pollution within the basin? And also, what are some of the challenges to enforcing compliance?
When I started, working to protect the Atchafalaya Basin, it was more protect the basin and the Louisiana coastal wetland forest, cypress logging. That was the main thing. All my time went into, I could not do nothing else. That was it. We managed to stop most of the cypress logging in the year 2008. The last logging operation in the Atchafalaya Basin was stopped in the year 2012. They tried a couple more times, and it was stopped. So now this year they started again, and this year they started again because we don't have laws that protect wetland for any forest, really, like other countries. But the only laws that we have protect wetlands. So when you're gonna cut a wetland forest, it's a wetland. So you need to make roads and make heavy equipment in very soft soil. So you gotta make roads, logging roads, to get access to the trees. So if you have a drought and everything is completely bone dry, you don't have to make those roads anymore. You can just cut them like any other forest. So this year we had the main drought, the big drought, and they did start cutting cypress forest again. It's nothing the Corps could do, because as far as I know now, thanks God, the Corps is enforcing in coastal Louisiana, is enforcing, and or we could do, because it was completely illegal. So it's not 100% stop, but it took a big drought for them to be able to do that.
Okay.
It will be very hard for them to do it again if it's for normal, weather conditions.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. In the Atchafalaya Basin, there was a lot of companies that they were doing. There was, for example, the Corps was granted a permit for a new oil access canal on average every 2 years. When they dig the canals, they go through the wetlands, and they dig the canal and they put the dirt on the side of the canal. That's called the spoil bank, the spoil of the dredging.
Okay.
So you have a canal with levees, which is the spoil bank, the spoil of the dredging on the side. When those levees are blocking water flow, if the water don't flow, the water becomes stagnant. It affects the ecology of the Atchafalaya Basin. So we sent legal comments on the last one that they applied for in year 2004, right when Basinkeeper was being created. And we stopped that one there, and ever since, we managed to stop all of them. So from that one in 2004 until now, there's not been any new oil access canals built in the Atchafalaya Basin. We've been enforcing, pipelines. We work with all companies. When they're gonna build a pipeline through the basin, the main thing we ask is that they follow the environmental laws. So we're not really against oil. We more just follow the law,
Yeah.
So we have companies like Air Products that they build a pipeline through the Atchafalaya Basin. We work with the company. We inspected the whole corridor, and the corridor was in compliance with the permits. We work with the companies about ways they can improve hydrology, which they did, and we never fought them. But then you got companies like another company like Enterprise that build a pipeline through the basin, and they dam several waterways. They have all this loose that crosses the pipeline. There were dams on it. We report that to the Corps, and the Corps didn't enforce. So we sent a notice of intent against the company to remove those dams, and the company did remove the dams. So we enforcing the permit from the Corps. So it's a deterrent to have an entity like us entice companies. Okay, we can go with them and do it right, or else we can do whatever we want and get sued. So we have a lot of companies that will do illegal dams, illegal roads, and we stop pretty much most of it. So it's so much stuff that we've been doing ever since and that's only with very few employees. It's been mainly 2 employees, a part-time attorney, and
it's amazing that you've been able to
yes,
stop some of this activity with just a little organization like yours.
Yes. And it's a lot more issues that we so far we can't even go after. We need to increase our capacity, hire more people so we can, tackle all these problems that nobody else is tackling.
Yeah.
And if it's happening in the basin, it's happening everywhere. It's not only in the basin, and nobody's doing anything about it,
What would be your ideal water management plan for the basin going forward?
We actually have a master plan that we share with the Corps, There is ways to keep the sand in the main river. So you had Atchafalaya River, and you had these tributaries, channels that go to the side, and that's where, through these tributaries, that's where the water gets into the swamps. Okay, the way it is designed right now is to capture more sand from the river, So it's a way to keep that sand in the river away from the wetlands to use for coastal restoration. So our plan, calls for several things. When they build the levee systems, they protect us from river flooding. But if you got 30 inches of rain here on top of us, the water cannot drain across that levee. So we're on the wrong side of the levee. So the levees actually hurt us when the flooding, you have a tropical system over Louisiana, and you dump a bunch of water on top of us, the levees are working against us. So one way to solve that problem, it is to what they call leaky levees.
Okay.
Remember how at the beginning I said when they build the levees, they cut every single waterway into? You reconnect every single, you restore the whole hydrology of the basin the way it used to be with gates.
Yeah.
So in the summer when the water is low, those gates are open, fish, shad can migrate, crabs can migrate through it, people can go from their homes, in the boat and go, you don't have to go in the landing, you go from there, you go into the basin the way it used to be. You have a tropical system, everything is open, everything can drain into the basin. We protect it. When the water in the spring start coming up, at a certain point, you close those gates and you protect it, So it will save so many billions of dollars on flood damage and all that because the basin becomes, and you don't have to spend money in fuel for pumps or anything like this. You allow the system to work for you the way you want it to work naturally. After you do that, you don't cost nothing pretty much to maintain
just open
it.
The gate.
Open the gate, So that's one of the part, So you open back the levees, and then you keep the sand in the main channel. So the way you keep the sand in the main channel, the sand moves, it's heavy, and that's what filling up the wetlands. It kind of moves through the system. The current slows down a little bit because it's heavy, it drops, So you want the sand in the main channel. And the way you do that, you create a structure. You have the bulk of the current going into this tributary. You can see it through the camera. You create a structure so the water, the current is being pushed back to the center of the river, and then it goes around, and then you have a big area that is going to slow down the current, so the sand that goes around it is going to drop in there. It's called a sediment trap. And then every year you have very few these tributaries. That's most of the water goes, through them. So what you do is every year you suction dredge that sediment trap and put it back in the river, let it go to the coast. And then above Morgan City used to be a lake called Grand Lake, huge lake. It filled up with sand. You mine that sand, and you create one pipeline that is fixed. And you got flexible pipelines on the top and flexible pipelines on the bottom in Terrebonne. And you mine that sand that they don't have the material to protect the coast, and you send it through the pipeline to where you want it. And that's an unlimited amount of sand because it comes back every year, and you trap it. You keeping the sand away from the area that we need for protection and the habitat, and keep it on the channel, and it drops right over Morgan City. You save all the money that it takes every year because there's so much sand in the Atchafalaya that many boats cannot go there use it because there's so much sand. It plugs in the water intakes for the cooling systems of the boat. They had to dredge it every year for navigation for the port of Morgan City because, so all that money that you're using for dredging, you don't have to do it anymore because you're trapping it above Morgan City in that big sediment trap, and you're mining it. You have the pipeline. The pipeline, once it's built, is fixed. You don't have to do anything with it. You put solar panels for the pumps. It don't cost a penny. The pumps, work with the sun, and then you have unlimited sun to be able to protect the coast the way you need to protect the coast.
Okay.
So it's our plan for the Atchafalaya Basin that I know that the core primas told us the CPR was supposed to, will have to support that plan, and we know the oil companies and pipeline companies will never support that plan because they want the basin field. So that's what we are today, but we hopefully will be pushing toward a plan like that will guarantee the future of the Atchafalaya Basin, the ecosystems, and the future of humans, our kids and grandkids, to survive in coastal Louisiana for a long, long, long time.
So do you have any other goals for the Atchafalaya Basinkeeper in the future? Obviously, you want to bring some more people on, you said. Or
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need members for many different reasons. We need funding. You know, we have very limited funding. So that's why we don't have the capacity to deal with many of the issues that we need to deal with. So members are very, very important for us. You know, we very volunteer heavy.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the staff. So we have lots of volunteers. We have pretty much, I think it will be close to 2,000 members now. So we got a good bit for Louisiana. There's a pretty large amount of members, you know. But members also give us a standing, you know, like our laws are complicated, you know. And one thing that you need is somebody doing something illegally in your fishing grounds or the hunting grounds, whatever it is. For us to intervene, we have to have a standing. So Basin Keeper, if we don't have a member that's been affected, we do not have standing, even though it's illegal.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody put an illegal dam and we don't have one of our members affected by that dam, we don't have standing. So our members give us a standing in court to be able to challenge those, you know, illegal activities and
Right.
deal with those issues.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Dean, for talking
Thank you.
to me today.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to On Our Watch. We hope you enjoyed our discussion with Dean Wilson. Don't forget to subscribe to On Our Watch on your favorite podcast app to be notified about future episodes. You can also watch a video version of this podcast on YouTube, which you can find a link to in the description. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back with another episode next week. This podcast is made possible through grant funds from the Greater New Orleans Foundation and executive produced by Bruno UK Steiner.